Hello, everybody. My name is Klaus. I look after the Nginx side of the F5 business. I'm here to talk to you today about some of the things we also mentioned in the panel discussion about cloud first, and I'll try to give you my view on this and where I think we're going as an industry. Love to get any questions into the chat. I'll also be available on our booth later if you want to have a conversation, but let's kick into it. So I'm going to start off with a question here. What do you see? What do you think you see? These are the Amazon or AWS revenue numbers. And you'll see a clear trend in this. What do you think we see here? Something that most of us probably hear about, but struggle to figure out how to monetize on: Kubernetes. So the growth, the adoption of Kubernetes and the microservices is growing drastically. So what do we see here? We see a trend in the traditional IT infrastructure pinching a little bit down. So what we also see is the growth of modern applications, the growth of cloud computing is adopting. And looking at the first two slides, I think it's interesting to call out, and I get to brag because I'm here. You know, if you look at Nginx and you look at where the market, where your customers are going, we're the leading technology within those modern applications. So if you're looking at microservices, if you're looking at containers, more than half of everything is running Nginx. If you're looking into cloud native applications, and especially around Kubernetes, Nginx is by far the leading technology used here. So what does that mean to you, right? I mean, in essence, we're talking about that software is eating the world. I would say software is disrupting the world, and people are looking into how do we be more flexible? How do we move to cloud? And as I said in the panel discussion, what is cloud and what does it actually mean to people? So is cloud first the right approach? And I love getting that question, you know, from a customer saying I'm a cloud first company. I always ask, what's your three most important applications and where do you serve them? And most of them are not in the cloud. And I think some of the key reasons for that is things that was also called out in the panel discussion was these type of vendor lock-ins, right? So once you go into a cloud, it's difficult to be hybrid. It's difficult to be flexible because you're kind of tied in with the boundaries that you have within that cloud. So I hope throughout my presentation, I'll be able to show you how we with Nginx within F5 can help you be more flexible, how we can help you address new markets and help your customers actually thrive throughout that journey and in a safe, secure, and scalable way. I like to call out this. As we said, software is eating the world. Disruption is happening at the speed of software. What do we see here? Besides some of the biggest brands, biggest logos in the industry today. We see a transportation company that doesn't own any cars. We see a travel agency that doesn't own any airplanes. We see a hotel chain that doesn't own any hotels. We also see the way that we are adopting our everyday life into the way we consume music, to the way we watch movies or series. These are all now available whenever we want them to be available. These are true hyperscaling applications or born in the cloud type vendors. But then we also have a bank, and banks are probably one of the industries that's being disrupted the most because people today do not go to the banks. I can't even remember the last time I went to the bank. Everything I do today is based on an application on my phone, and I have quite the amount of applications on my phone. Travel agencies, hotel change, which I don't use a lot these days, but we all hope to get back to doing that. The question is, how does your application actually work once it becomes available for your customers. Google ran an analysis at a time saying, what's the patience of the internet? The average patient is 2.6 seconds. So if your application is not responding within, let's call it 3 seconds, you're risking of losing business. And this is what's happening for your customers. And even the customers that you do not think are in this game, they are actually in this game. We have the CTO of Domino's saying, we're a technology company that also delivers pizza. That's a very, very strong message, if you ask me. And if you look at the Domino's app, and you can think of Domino's of what you want, but if you look at their app, the app is very, very precise and to the point. So they actually evolved that much that you could say to Alexa, you want to order a pizza. You can speak to your Apple Watch and say, I want a double pepperoni. It knows where you are. It has your credit card connected into your Apple Pay, so it'll just send you a pizza and take the money off your credit card account. But the Domino's app also tells you, when to expect delivery. So it will tell you very, very accurately, your dough has just hit the dressing table, right? Your pizza is out of the oven. It's now put into a box, and we're sending it to you. Watch the door. In 5 minutes, the doorbell would ring, and your pizza is there. So they actually adopted technology that much that they kind of put themselves in a crazy leading position. So I want to bring out a fun fact here, because most people do not necessarily think that you will be, that you will be thinking of a technology pizza once you think about Domino's. You will probably think more of the pizza company, right? But Domino's is actually one of the companies in the world that's survived the pandemic best. And actually, if you go back to 2009 and you invested $1,000 in Domino's and $1,000 in Netflix or Tesla, you would have gotten a better outcome investing in Domino's. So even the companies that we think are not in this modern world approach, that are, we don't necessarily consider them as being application first companies, they're there. That's the most important business for them. And they also deliver pizza. So what do we do within F5 and NGINX? Most of you probably know F5 from a very, very network centric approach, coming with, very close to the application. And what we do in the NGINX side of the business is actually very, very close to the development of the things. So how do we actually create the code? How do we make the code available through an application and protect it and scale it? So within NGINX, we bring a couple of new offerings into the F5 traditional workload that sits around, modern applications, open standards that you heard about in the panel discussions. So talking about this one API, right? And how do we make it available for our customers? So to kind of box it down and make it simple, you can put this into 4 categories. Hardware to software is a lot of focus right now. So how do you help the migration of these hardware-based applications to be more flexible with a software approach? Once you're there, it's very easy for you to adopt the cloud. And today, most of the cloud services that are available today are actually built on a technology similar to NGINX, if not using NGINX as the connecting tool. So if you have NGINX sitting in your infrastructure together with whatever you have, you're capable of leveraging NGINX as your standard API or your open API communications to how you communicate with cloud. And that's the only way you can actually become true hybrid flexible cloud. So speaking about APIs, a lot of applications today is created with an API integration. And we do see a request from a lot of companies about how do I pull data from legacy systems? How do I pull data from mainframe systems and make them available in my mobile world, in the mobile app? These are things that are driven by API integrations. And this is one of the key things that we actually do when it becomes modern applications. We already talked about Kubernetes and what it means, and the adoption of NGINX within Kubernetes being the default leader in this space of the world. So what does it actually mean, when we're talking hardware to software? We're talking about DevOps integrations. Hybrid cloud, it's across the big hyperscalers, but it could be any cloud, right? When we speak to customers, we know that they're using between 50 up to 200 different cloud services, and potentially they have 200 different ways to communicate with clouds, which makes it very, very complex. This is why having an open standard, an open API like NGINX to speak to when you're communicating with hybrid clouds makes you a lot more flexible for you. API management, it's pretty much about performance, integrations. It's about pulling data from certain systems and making them available in other systems. This has to happen real time and has a tremendous amount of speed. And there is nothing in industry today that can live up to the performance of what we do as an API gateway. When we talk about modernizations of apps, you often see things like Kubernetes and OpenShift. One of the key things that I really like about what we do within NGINX and F5 is whatever you do on this journey, we are capable of embedding security at the core. So we can help you be flexible and secure on your software migrations. We can help you be secure on that journey you need to take to the cloud. And like I said in the panel discussion, if you are not safe in the cloud, you will never adopt cloud probably. So it's important for us to make sure that whatever you do, we bring the compliances, we bring the rules, we bring the regulations that you've built and trusted your infrastructure on, and we're just extending that into the modern application and the modern approach that you take. And with the API integrations and the microservices integrations, we can actually embed security at the core. So when you create your modern applications, your modern containers from scratch, you're building it on a foundation of the trusted security that you already have. So I said it in the beginning, cloud first, or should we really talk about application first? In my mind and in my world, nobody cares about infrastructure. Infrastructure is legacy. You can buy infrastructure everywhere. It's a bold statement, but you care about your applications. If your application is not responding within 3 seconds to your customer's need, you don't care if they're running in a cloud or they're running in a data center. The most important thing that people have is the application, and that's what the core of what they're bringing to the market. Remember the Domino's pizza, right? We're a technology company that also delivers pizza. If you're booking a vacation, how long do you wait for the search engine to actually come up with what you're looking for? 3 seconds, and you go somewhere else. Everybody today is an application-focused company, and this is what we do within F5. We focus on applications from the way you create them to the way you protect them, scale them, and make them available to the outside world. Just want to bring out a quick what's next here, and I think we're all going to be, we're a couple of people from F5 NGINX that's going to be available at a booth. So drop by the virtual booth, get the stamp so you can win the phone, iPhone or Android, depending on what you want. But try to make it simple, right? Let's find and identify a strategy together. Together with Westcon, we can help you drive this secure cloud adoption and help your customers be more secure on their cloud journey. We can also help you, integrate what you're doing today in the security space and help you be that Sec DevOps or DevSecOps advisor that you want to be to your customers. And then we just, together with Westcon, announced a very, very cool campaign around how we integrate NAP in a box. So we have a NGINX application protection module that there's a marketing campaign running together with Westcon. So reach out to your local team and ask them how to be added into this. Looking forward to speaking to you at the virtual booth later. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Hi, Klaus. Thanks for that. Right, everybody. Good to see you. Right, hi everybody. My name is Matt Griffiths. I am the Channel SE Manager for Checkpoint UK, and today I am going to quickly have a chat with you guys, just basically about what is DevOps and how we can help eventually. But I'm not going to go too much on the products that Checkpoint have to offer. We have a huge range and a huge portfolio. It would take me hours to get through what we do in the DevOps environment. So I'm just going to quickly run through exactly sort of what DevOps means to me. Hopefully you can take some ideas from it, and then I'll wrap up at the end, excuse me, with a simple quick showing of what we at Checkpoint do. So as we all know, this was the old-fashioned way that we used to do things, okay? We used to build nice big data centers. We used to put cabling in. We used to love the systems. We truly did enjoy them. This was great. It worked for 25 years. We've had a great time. Most of us have good employment. We've worked our way through well. Many of us have sort of risen within the industry, but it was slow. So if you look at what we did in the past, if somebody wanted to do something quite as simple as, say, set up a server, a simple web server, right? Using something like Nginx, just like Klaus showed us. What would they need to do? They need to choose the hardware. That's usually quite a long process. Somebody would end up sending a PO. We would then wait for the hardware to be delivered. At some point, somebody would have to go into a data center to rack and cable it. They then need to install an operating system. That would then need to be patched. You need to install something, probably like Nginx, and then eventually copy the content to the web server. Only at this point were we able to offer a service. Now, what happens now is DevOps do this sort of thing. They simply log onto the cloud, they'll do Docker run Nginx, and they'll start using the web server. Now, granted, if you want a full web server, that's usually a few extra, usually looking at a few extra lines of code to actually get the full web server connected to the back end. But that's effectively all they did, which effectively means that DevOps can now spin up web servers in a matter of minutes, which is a heck of a difference in comparison to what we did years and years and years ago. So what is DevOps? This is we often talk about it, we explain what's going on, but often we don't really know. But a more pertinent question would often be, why is DevOps so popular? It's been around for almost 20 years. The Agile Software Manifesto came out almost 20 years ago. DevOps really is an offshoot of that. So why is it so popular? Well, the main reason is cloud, especially these particular people here, and of course, Amazon. What happened when cloud, and especially Amazon, started to come to the fore was that they offered pretty much any single developer out there a full suite of tools that would allow them to be able to turn around and say, right, I'm going to build a huge web application or a massive back-ended system, and I can now do that without needing huge amounts of resource, without needing huge amounts of funding, without needing 2 or 3 years lead-up time. I can simply get down and use all the tools that they have to offer. And that's one of the ways that the likes of AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud really have come to the fore. It's one of the reasons why the cloud is so important now, because literally anybody, somebody in their bedroom, or even a really big organization, can take advantage of the tooling that AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud gave us. This brought DevOps much more into the realms of your everyday user. So previous to the big cloud providers, if you wanted to run a DevOps environment, you generally needed quite a lot of funding because you'd need orchestrators, you'd need underlying systems to enable things like VMware to push the infrastructure out into your existing data center. With AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, all that was taken away, so anyone can use it. As a result, if you want to think about it, if you're an application developer or you have a great idea for an application, simply use one of the big hyperclouds. Everything you need is there. You want a load balancer, it's a couple of clicks. More importantly, it's also fully API-able. And what that means is that everything can start to become code, which is exactly where DevOps live. So one of the important things to remember is, what is DevOps? Well, firstly, DevOps is not a product. Right? At no point in time will anybody ever contact Westcon and say, hi, Westcon, I'd like to buy 30 DevOps, please. It is not a product. It is instead a philosophy. It's just like the Agile Manifesto, simply an evolution of it. So DevOps is a loose set of practices, guidelines, and importantly, a culture. And the idea behind it is to break down silos in IT development, operations, networking, and security. And for those of you out there that may have worked with DevOps teams, what you'll find is that in a DevOps team, there is no IT development department, there's no operations department, there's no networking department, and there's no security department. It is all one simple team, the DevOps team, and they do absolutely everything. So effectively what they can do is, and if you think about this in an office environment, I realize many of us haven't actually been in an office for a protracted period of time now, but in that office environment, where you may have various teams and people can sort of, they can stand up and say, hey, how do I do this? And somebody maybe 2 desks away will be responsible for that. So that's what DevOps is. And always remember this, it is a philosophy of a group of practices and guidelines. It is not a thing. Now it can be defined by a number of pillars. One of the great things about DevOps practices is that one, they reduce the organizational silos. So you don't need such big teams. The whole thing can be done by very small groups of people in a single team. Secondly, they accept failure as normal. Now, to many of us in the industry that have, that we have to have really good software coming out in our systems all the time, this seems strange. But the great thing with DevOps, as we'll see later on in the presentation, is that they can deploy infrastructure, they can deploy code, and they can pull it back just as quickly. So one of the things that DevOps is really good at is really taking a risk. They may decide to implement a change, and if that change doesn't work, they can pull it back just as quickly. One of the most important parts about DevOps is this basic understanding, the implementation of gradual changes. So in a DevOps world, software evolves. You don't get release cycles that every year you get a new version of software. It evolves, often on a daily basis. We talk about in DevOps the concept of velocity. Just to tell you how much that is, on average, Amazon deploys code into its data centers 22,000 times a day. Okay, they're slowly evolving software, and you can actually see this on a daily basis. If any of you are out there into video games, one of the common ways video games are deployed now is that a preview copy's come out, and that preview copy, everybody looks at it, everybody wonders what's going on with that preview copy, and then what they do is they effectively sit there and make small incremental changes. In the space of a year, you finally have a game that's worth playing. And the other thing that DevOps do is they measure everything. If they're pushing code deployments out, they want to know that something's worked. In the case of a game, for example, they may turn around and say, I need to be able to sharpen my axe at this particular point in the game. If the players themselves don't like that, then they can simply withdraw that again, and they can do it very, very quickly. They can play around with things. And the practices that DevOps people tend to use are continuous integration and continuous delivery, otherwise known as CI/CD, microservices, infrastructure as code, monitoring and logging, communication and collaboration. That's really important because when you speak to DevOps teams, they're very, very willing to speak to their end users. When they speak to their end users, what actually happens is they get a really good understanding and a really good idea of what's going on. That means, for example, in the case of Checkpoint, with our CloudGuard Native, which is a pure DevOps platform and developed as a DevOps operation, you can actually contact the developers. They have a Slack channel. You can get on there and say, I don't like this. Could you change it? Or here's a good idea. And if they like it, they'll pop it on. So what happens with DevOps is this. In the old days, we used to have a waterfall where people would define what's going on with the system. They would build the code. They would release the code. And finally, after a period of time, usually 1 to 2 years, they would gain the value from the product. What DevOps allows everybody to do is to define, build, and release fragments of code, building value upon value as they go through the software cycle. They can add value in. If somebody has a great idea, they can literally put that idea into the code within a matter of minutes. And then see if people like it, because again, they're looking at this communication and collaboration all the way through. So what are DevOps practices? You've probably all seen this. This is the DevOps infinity loop. The idea behind it is that you plan your software, you build your software, you integrate your software, you deploy it, you operate it, you get your feedback, and you start right back at the beginning yet again. So what actually happens? Well, DevOps themselves, these are coders. So in practice, developers do everything, including the infrastructure build, the coding, the security, everything as code, meaning that they're doing the app, the infrastructure, the security, and they're doing the testing. But how do they do this? For a start, that's an awful lot of things to do with code. And secondly, as I mentioned before, with the velocity that they achieve, that's incredibly quick. So due to the speed of this, they automate everything. In the DevOps world, there's a concept of toil. The concept of toil is doing something more than once. Nobody wants to do anything more than once. They will develop a script and they'll automate it from that point onwards. So we come across the concept of the speed of DevOps. Now with the speed of DevOps, a developer can write code and they can build a data center literally in minutes from the simple click of a button. As soon as they've entered their code, they can click commit, and an entire back end can be built literally in minutes to actually facilitate that code or to facilitate the system that they wish to do. And conversely, they can remove it again at the click of a button. Once that particular code has done its job, they can simply look at it and decide, right, in that case, we're going to shut that code down. And the entire data center under it will vanish. And there are problems with this. And we'll get over to that shortly in a minute, because they're constantly building, constantly adding code, constantly making changes. The entire environment they're in, rather than like it was before in the good old days where everything was controlled and change controlled, that now no longer exists. They're simply pumping code in, they're building data centers, and they're ripping it down when they're finished with them. Now, one of the primary ways they deal with this is what they call the pipeline. So the pipeline, often known as CI/CD, okay, but generally the whole thing in itself is called the pipeline, is the way that they automate. So effectively, a human being writes the code. He sits down, he writes the code, and when he's happy with the code, he'll hit the commit button. Now, the idea is to take that code, to build the code, to integrate it, to do a series of tests, to review it, to stage it, and then finally to put it into production. But no human being will take part in any of this. There may be a final code review where, somebody more senior up may hit a review button, but generally on the whole, it'll be completely automated. So the whole thing is automated. Now, one of the things that you may hear, especially when it comes to security, is the concept of shift left. And what the idea behind that is, if this is running so quickly, if we're moving from a point of code being committed to production literally in a matter of minutes, how do we secure this? Okay. Now, we secure this using what we would call shift left, which was we move the security checking further down the pipeline so that as soon as the code is built, we're checking for what's going on in the code. So data centers are now code, right? How do we fit into this? Well, one of the important things to remember is that all developers will code for functionality. They code for functionality because that's their job. Their job is to build an app, okay? Their job isn't to worry about anything else. And this is where the pipeline, and certainly with the shift left tools that are available, it really comes in. So if you have a developer who's coding for functionality, he doesn't want that slowed down. Under no circumstances does he want that coding slowed down. It is not welcome, okay? That includes security. If you think about it, if you're trying to get functionality out on an app, then actually doing any security whatsoever will slow down the coding of that functionality. You've got to check things have got to be decided upon. All these sorts of things will slow down a developer, and that's not what they want. A developer just wants to write code for functionality and go home at the end of the day and enjoy a beer. So one of the important things to remember is that DevOps is truly different. One of the problems that we have in our industry is that we are, in a way, attempting to sell security. We're attempting to sell devices into an entirely new area of the industry, okay, which is DevOps. And they don't use the same language that we do. They talk of things like GitHub, Jenkins, which is a pipeline tool, Docker, Kubernetes, Lambda functions, Azure functions, GCP functions, shift left. All of these are alien words to most of us. But this is the tools that developers tend to use, okay? Not all of them. There are various different versions. Other DevOps systems are available, okay? But this is what they're doing. We need to understand the language that DevOps are using in order to help them out and do what they need to do. So from our point of view, security now takes place in the pipeline and in deployment. It's not enough to simply secure something once it's been deployed into your infrastructure. You need to make sure, because of the speed at which everything's being deployed, that it's also checked in the pipeline as well. So that before it enters production, we know that it's pretty much as secure as it's going to be. Then as soon as it's in deployment, we can actually turn around and say, right, let's keep it secure at any point. Now, this sounds interesting, but one of the big issues that we get is that a lot of our security skills are going to need some re-education. The security is still the same, but they're doing it in a different manner. For example, with the microservices, if you look at a Lambda function or a function from any one of the providers, they have no underlying network infrastructure. There is nothing to protect, okay? There's no perimeter anymore. so that the perimeter has now been blurred when microservices come into the system. This is never good, excuse me, because in the old days, and we get a lot of this from our partners, where a simple lift and shift is pretty much what they're looking for, what they're after. No longer a lift and shift works because the actual network itself pretty much is starting to have no perimeter. And with the speed at which things are deployed, it's almost impossible to put a traditional gateway in front of that. So we need extra services to do it. Excuse me, everybody. So what exactly are the problems? Now, the problems that can be caused by DevOps, specifically the speed of DevOps, is this. There can be a total lack of visibility going on what's going on in your cloud, a complete lack. People are building and stripping things down literally on an hourly basis. So you never really know exactly how many functions you're running. You never really know how many servers you might be running on a day-to-day or a minute-by-minute basis. Much of the software that they use is vulnerable. One of the things, and a good example here was with Docker, this came out a couple of months ago, was that almost 80% of the Docker images are vulnerable. Because like I said earlier on, DevOps people tend to code for functionality. So if they need an image, they'll simply download an image. It's that simple. If you're looking at sort of some of the more commercially available Docker images, then yes, they're going to be secure. But there's a lot of stuff out there in Docker that really has vulnerabilities all over it, and they really don't know they're using it. And what's worse, it's up for so little period of time that often there's never even a chance to realize that they're actually using vulnerable images. Compliance and security are usually a second thought. Like I said, at all times, what people are actually interested in is functionality. So to make sure it's compliant with your security policy, it's compliant with various standards, this is a second thought. And often, you know, there's a feeling that sometimes they can get away with it. Also, the underlying infrastructure can use a multitude of services across different clouds. There's nothing to stop a DevOps person, for example, turning around and saying, I'm going to use some functions on AWS, but I'm going to use some AI on Google, and moving data around the clouds like this on a more regular basis. So it becomes very, very difficult to understand which cloud they're using or what services they're using on it. And of course, a human being cannot cope with any of this. This is happening far too fast. As DevOps are deploying code and building infrastructure fully automatically, your poor old good old-fashioned security engineer is not going to be able to realize what they're doing. As soon as you realize there may be an issue, that infrastructure may be torn down or that code may be changed again. So he's back to square one. So effectively, the challenge that we have when we're looking at security in the cloud is we need to be unified, we need to be continuous. We need to ensure that governance is maintained at all times, that we have full visibility of everything that's being built in the cloud and who's building it, why they're building it, and how they're building it. And also we need to prevent poor software going out with security holes in it, and also when it's in production. So if somebody discovers a CVE, we can immediately block that so it isn't exploited. But more importantly, we need to do that across all clouds, all networks, and all workloads. And all three will change literally all the time. Now with Checkpoint, we have the CloudGuard range. So the idea behind CloudGuard is that we offer you unified multi-cloud security. So we can protect public and privates, which is our good old-fashioned stuff. We also have our cloud security posture management, which is our domain CloudGuard native, as we call it. And the idea behind that is to make sure that you're fully compliant at any point and that your security policy is compliant. We can also protect all the workloads in both containers and serverless. We have a web application and API protection, known as our AppSec, which is a nano agent-based WAF. And we also have full unified cloud threat intelligence hunting. So we can actually see what's going on and we can spot things that are odd that are working inside your network, which is always a great thing, okay? So we have a full product set with a full suite of functionality that can work. All run with APIs, easily built in, takes about 20 minutes to onboard any account, and you have full protection from that point onwards. So with Checkpoint, using CloudGuard, especially CloudGuard native, everything is fully automated from the point of deployment right through the CI/CD pipeline and into the runtime prevention, a fully automated system. And of course, Checkpoint's industry-leading security, high fidelity cloud security, posture management, and advanced cloud threat. And of course, it's everywhere. So we can be checking in the CI/CD pipelines, we can be looking in the productions, from private clouds to public clouds and across any workload on all three. So Checkpoint can offer you a way of getting out of DevOps with a unified native security platform. You've got DevOps people in your organizations. You may not realize they're there, but they're there. And if they're not there now, they will be there fairly shortly. What you can do is to work with them, understand how the security policy now exists as more of an esoteric policy as opposed to a list on a gateway somewhere, and we can deploy that across your system, fully automatic, high-level security, and on any cloud. And with that, I'd like to thank you and hand back. I think you might be on mute.
Thank you very much. I'm covering up for the original host. So thanks a lot. It has been really interesting. There is one question for you here in the chat. Do you have any recommendations on how channel partners can monetize DevOps?
Yeah, so we actually do quite a lot of stuff on monetization. So I'll give you a simple answer, but if anyone's interested, please reach out to your Westcon reps. We can do this in like a 2-hour chat. But effectively, what you need to do is to understand. You need to get into the DevOps teams. You need to fully understand that DevOps teams are different and that they want to get rid of any security headache. So one of the things I always say to any of our partners out there is start looking at a SaaS solution that you can turn around to DevOps people and say, we will take the security on board for you. That means managed services. Okay, so service attach. You're going to be making good money on that. It also means the provision of products. And it also means running forward that you're going to be doing a lot of consultancy. So those of you out there with a lot of consultants, this is exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for consultants to embed themselves in those DevOps customers, run a managed service, and also to run a managed SOC. And if you want more information on that, give us a shout. We're more than happy to run through the figures and numbers for you. Most of the people I've spoken to about it, it's required a little bit of tweaking with their business, but generally on the whole, they've relished it, jumped into it, and they found that it's a whole new avenue that partners can use to access new customers and also increase revenue with existing customers.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Matthew. And now we're moving forward with Colin Fernandez from Sumo Logic. So, Colin, welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, perfectly.
Super. Okay. Great sessions from the previous vendors. So again, I just want to highlight these very precious 20 minutes. My topic is about data-driven architecture, automating, and really looking at AI and machine learning to drive the automation across DevOps, and looking at why Sumo, our partnership with Westcon, and what we do differently. So just a bit of background. I think we heard from the past is everybody's on a journey. We actually manage customers who are either on the on-prem side, starting their migrations, working with a cloud-first model. And fortunately, for over 7 to 10 years, we've been working with some of the forward-thinking customers, looking at how to drive this journey. But the most important thing that I want to bring you today is the importance of data, the importance of accurate data, the right data to drive this migration, modernization, and consolidation into the cloud. So please also connect with the team in the booths to hear more about how we're helping customers. I think some of the logos were mentioned previously, but we're embarking on some very interesting use cases. But the most important message that I want to start with is that there is an increase in data. Not all data is created equally. Every object, every component, every microservice, every network creates data. That data needs to be collected, correlated with the right insights to help automate that decision-making process across the delivery cycle. So this was a report some time back that talked about the growth of data, and you can go and search that online. on the actual amounts of data that are being generated by organizations and just by companies that are moving towards this new paradigm. So I want to set the context and really rely on what our customers do with us. So today, I think you heard that the modern application stack is complex. This is my 35th year in IT. So I actually started with applications that were 1 tier, and now there's 7 to 10 tiers, really focusing on a stack. What we see today is customers are still driving siloed monolithic applications and calling them cloud. The perimeters and boundaries are really changing. So we talk about borderless, perimeterless solutions for security. The old stack, and really looking at on-prem, and really looking at how to help customers drive that multi-cloud or native strategy. I want to focus on the right-hand side, because this is how we solve the issues. The commonality and importance of one platform that's totally integrated, that really drives a central view to observability and security. The threat surface, internal and external, is changing. There's a multitude of tools. There's a lack of skill. And technologies like Kubernetes, microservices, and advanced technologies are exposing new layers and new surfaces. The other is about operational readiness, from building, testing, running, maintaining, and retiring. I spend a lot of time also talking about immutability and ephemerality. I've spent 12 years at VMware, and prior to that, I worked for a number of large organizations that, that are still out there today. So ephemerality, the sprawl, the complexity, the dynamism, and what goes on needs to be correlated and collected. And lastly, it's about a new business model. So the question about monetizing your services, monetizing your data, monetizing your processes are actually being done today with many of our customers. So we see 5 major requirements, and what I call, these are the typical challenges that customers are throwing at us today and over the last 10 years. The componentized application. So I spend a lot of time with Kubernetes, CDNs, storage, but I look at the design and architecture of multi-cloud. I look at the importance of componentizing to really drive that microservice agenda and optimize your code. Perimeterless security. Today, it's about choice. It's about having a multitude of tools. And I heard that you don't want to be locked into any particular vendor. The other is about data accuracy and truth of data. If your data source is out of date or invalid or not in real time, there is a exposure to risk of really using the wrong data to determine the context of an incident. And lastly, data continues to grow. So for Sumo Logic and Westcon, we're embarking on a partnership that really harnesses this data and unlocks the intelligence in real time across different environments and across that life cycle. We want to close this gap. We want to help our customers to make sure that when they make decisions that are automated or collaborative, that you're working on good data, not noisy data and inaccurate data. So just think about every single object that infers a state of data when it's being processed. So today, some of you would have heard of Sumo Logic, and I encourage you to go to the website and link in with me. But today we're analyzing the data, and we're protecting and managing that data for our customers in a secure way, a secure and trusted way. So a bit of background about Sumo Logic. Born and bred on AWS from day one, we've been pioneering continuous intelligence, which is a category of software that advances AI and ML into the solution. And what we do here is deliver business value. So make things quicker, make things more accurate, make things more collaborative, and drive that agenda that's really driving home that new modern DevOps approach. So with that, I wanted to highlight what we do. So I talked about the growth in data. Today, we average around 942 petabytes a day. So I want to just reflect on terabytes, petabytes, and the growth. These statistics really endorse our solution, our growth, and abilities to really ingest, collect, correlate, and really align to an automated approach to derive intelligence across a multitude of partners, technologies, and environments. Data presents itself in an unstructured, structured, and semi-structured fashion. So we're making sure that we collect all data for our customers. But we're always on a journey, so many customers are in that process of defining their modernization or re-architecture or lift and shift and componentizing their applications, moving to a multi-cloud world. So today, it's not just about the infrastructure, it's about the app. I heard that 3 times today. It's about the app. It's about every single component that behaves and performs within that application stack. The other is to make sure that we can serve our customers and not be locked into any technology, any solution, but support real-time security and compliance in a perimeterless world. Fourth is data access, data accuracy, and trust of telemetry. Today, data is very sensitive, and in order to manage the unknown of unknowns, you need to know and be accurate and really define the context of your service. And lastly is to manage the growth. Think about Moore's law, think about data growing, and also think about the fact of customers that are valuing the use of their data and the numbers that are not using data. So we talked about DevOps. I'm very encouraged from the last session. We manage DevOps. So I've been practicing DevOps for most of my life. It's not, as I said, it's not a product. It's a method. It's an approach. It's how you build, run, and secure your applications. But what's really interesting today is the what, the why, where, and the how. Many technologies, I've worked for a number of monitoring tools, but there's a difference between showing you a monitoring event and really doing the diagnosis and root cause. So we are managing to do real-time root cause with context. We provide entity dependencies. We provide a top-down, bottom-down, up approach to leveraging and understanding the root cause of latency, performance, or security. So it's important to understand that when you look at a vendor, when you look at a solution, how much data is accurate? Is the data integrated? And on the right-hand side, it shows you that 50% of the data is actually in troubleshooting, and many vendors find that hard to deal with. We've managed to capture this, and we're delivering this today to many retailers, financial services, and many, many customers that are really seeing the importance of driving good data to drive their observability and monitoring requirements. I wanted to put this in here because it's something that's really important to Sumo Logic. Our philosophy from day one was to really drive one platform and integrate all the use cases. So multiple use cases are critical. It's also important to understand that reliability is the foundation of customer experience. Always on. It has to be performing. So think of those objects from the technologies that we saw earlier today to your whole environment, and really look at that shift left, but also look at security and compliance, not from a process within a life cycle, but really being driven into the entire ecosystem. So we want to know the context of when something goes down, Why has latency dropped? Or is there a DDoS attack? Is there some odd behavior taking place? So for Sumo Logic, transforming complexity and a lot of data into contextual insights is critical. So as I mentioned before, we have the ability to take in large amounts of data from anywhere. We take in data from logs, events, traces, apps, infrastructure, whatever it is. But we need to go through a continuous system to collect and correlate, collect and centralize, monitor and visualize, alert and notify, search and investigate, predict, optimize, and automate. And we use machine learning and AI to drive this as a service. So today, you can check out some of our successes with Samsung, with many, many other customers, Channel 4. We work with small customers, medium-sized customers, and large customers. The important thing is that data should be democratized and shared securely between different stakeholders. So we talk about observability. So what is different for Sumo Logic? As I mentioned for you, we are a one platform, integrated, real-time. And all our applications are out of the box, ready to go. So I talked about the investment. So AWS, we have an app for AWS. We have an app for application observability across the software delivery lifecycle. So just think about all that intelligence being derived from a multitude of tools. We deal with multi-cloud observability, Kubernetes observability. We actually deliver optimization into the software delivery lifecycle. And the other that's most important is really managing the work from home and the edge, and looking at the data center, not just as a function of the service, but it's actually an ecosystem that supports our business today. So I was very encouraged by the last slide where we talked about the methodology on DevSecOps. So for Sumo Logic, DevSecOps is in our DNA. The life cycle, the multitude of tools, all these tools are emitting signals in real time. But what we do is benchmark these frequencies. We try and determine the velocity, the volume, the veracity, and try and build and understand how to increase the performance. So we provide industry insights, community insights, and now we're feeling pretty confident that we know how these technologies operate, but what's becoming apparent is how they get built into an architecture for different types of verticals and different types of applications. So find out more about how Sumo delivers intelligence automatically out of the box into the DevSecOps system. And most important at the end is we can show the great tool, but we need to look at the cost and the value. So something very important to Sumo Logic that differentiates itself is the cloud economics behind this. So all data is valuable. Not all data is created equal. We want to make sure that we offer our value and you pay for what you get. Old cost models don't deliver. So today we're tiering the data where we actually don't care what technologies you have. We manage everything, and we manage it at the flexibility and choice and value that our customers need. So business value, the realization to drive 8 value drivers with Sumo is critical to our business. So from revenue protection to customer experience, increase my delivery cycle, unify the bag of tools that I have, provide zero management, improve audit and security posture, and drive deeper insights. So we're working with many customers today, and many you know, but please visit our website, get in contact with the Sumo team on the breakout booths, and come and hear about the innovation sometimes the learnings about cloud and the reality of what's out there. But security is critical to Sumo. So we provide a framework to drive our DevSecOps practice with Westcon. We drive identity access, ITSM, cloud infrastructure, and a multitude of offerings. But just remember on the side that we need to be compliant as we manage the unknown of unknowns. We merely manage the sensitivity of telemetry for our customers. And we are regulated, and we have a number of high assertions. The last one, just to put it into context, is looking at the federal government in the US to be certified at a moderate level for FedRAMP. So this is extremely important that we ensure that our technologies are certified. So why Sumo? Just a couple of things to reach out to see if we can interact with the audience in our breakout sessions and our booths. Is we pioneered continuous intelligence 10 years ago. And now we're actually seeing the benefit of being built on AWS and on a cloud native platform to serve a multi-cloud environment. Centralized, single version for security and observability as one. And lastly is to deliver that value and return value and continue growing our customer base and amplifying the success and working together with Westcon to really deliver on a unique and differentiating proposition. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. It was very clear and very revealing presentation. So
all right.
Great. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I think there are no questions for you in the comments area, but in any case, if anything comes up, we'll reach you with whatever questions they may ask. Excellent. So now we're over to Sharag Gag from Symantec. Welcome, Sharag.
Thank you. All right. Are we good to start?
Okay. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So hello, everyone. I'm Sharad Ghag, Principal Product Manager at Broadcom for Cloud Workload Protection products. And I thank you all for joining me today on this session. Today, I'll be talking about cloud security, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on some key security challenges in the cloud world. And we'll also talk about how CWP suite of products helps address those challenges. We'll have the Q&A session after the presentation is done, and I hope we get some time for that. So let's get started. So let's look at the situation today, right? So we have seen the data centers move from physical data centers to private clouds, all virtualized. And then now we see many enterprises that are rapidly adopting public cloud services such as AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP, Oracle Cloud. And that is to increase the business agility, modernize IT, and to take some pressure off their understaffed IT departments, and in general to reduce cost, right? So while these organizations are adopting cloud rapidly, not all workloads are suited to move to the cloud. That is either due to the compliance requirements, or it is simply to optimize the IT investments. So most of the organizations today have a hybrid environment, which comprises of assets in public cloud, private cloud, as well as on-premise assets, right? So these broad range of environments bring in variety of challenges, and the security risks due to increased attack surface as well as the number of vulnerabilities you need to manage. And the legacy solutions that we have, they do not really fit in well and do not scale in these cloud environments because they are very dynamic. Most of the customers have multi-cloud setups, and the legacy tools do not support multi-cloud environments out of the box, and they cannot be integrated in the DevOps practices to secure the assets from day zero. So we have a varied set of technologies which come together in a hybrid environment, and it becomes a very challenging situation. And if you understand, for cloud security providers, they have this shared responsibility model. And a lot of customers are not aware that the service providers do not own the security, do not own all the security aspects, and it is a shared responsibility. So in case of data breach or service interruptions, cloud vendors are only responsible for securing the infrastructure. So for everything above the hypervisor is something for the customer to take care of. Customers share this responsibility of securing their workloads, their accounts, applications, and their data. And hence, it's extremely important for the customers to have the right solutions deployed. Lifting and shifting the existing security controls, which you have been using on-prem scenarios or your private clouds, may not be the right approach. You need something which is a cloud-native solution to address this mix. So now let's look at the issues you need to deal with. And most of the organizations have this basic challenge of limited visibility into their workloads, right? So if you have an organization which is having multiple data centers across the world, once you're on the cloud, it is really challenging to know how many workloads are existing, how many accounts are there, are they protected, are they regularly patched? The organization really needs to have this visibility and have answers to these questions. And having this visibility itself is a first step towards securing your assets. Now, coming to the object stores like S3 buckets and Azure blobs, you can use you can use this to store your data, but at the same time, they can house malwares and be used to distribute malwares as well. And there could be missed configurations that could lead to non-compliances and failed audits. And these vulnerabilities could also be exploited to cause data breaches. Lastly, as most of the organizations have hybrid environments, customers need to ensure that their on-prem and cloud assets are also protected. And they need to have a holistic view where they are able to manage their on-prem assets as well as the cloud assets from a single pane. So what is the solution? So Cloud Workload Protection Suite offers a cloud-native single console security solution for multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments. So we have products like Cloud Workload Protection, which helps you protect the cloud compute and with cloud-native discovery, monitoring, and protection capabilities like anti-malware scans, real-time file integrity monitoring, hardening technologies. And it supports all the major cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Similarly, we have a solution for storage, which is Cloud Workload Protection for Storage, which helps you protect the Amazon S3 buckets, Azure blobs, with cloud-native discovery. So you're able to automatically discover your storage objects and run anti-malware scans. Now it provides you alerts when storage objects are misconfigured or exposed to public internet. And all these anti-malware scans can be scheduled, and they are in-tenant scans. So the customer's data is never leaving the customer's protected environment. It's all secured all the time. And we have cloud workload assurance, which offers cloud security posture management solution to benchmark security controls and configurations to maintain compliance for AWS, Azure, Google Cloud environments. So basically, it's a comprehensive set of solutions that address your cloud needs, cloud security needs. Now let's deep dive into the specific challenges that you have in the infrastructure as a service for compute. Now, it's extremely difficult for any organization to discover and monitor cloud workloads and security postures without a cloud native integration. And since the environment is very dynamic, it is really challenging for them to have a holistic view of what assets exist in their environment and their security posture. Now, if the workloads haven't been properly patched, malwares and threats can easily infect the computer. So it can easily infect the compute instances as well as storage. And if these computer instances or storages are accessed by applications and end users, there's a chance of propagating that infection further. Zero-day attacks can exploit unknown vulnerabilities on applications, operating systems, as well as configuration files. And attackers can exploit application vulnerabilities to hijack processes and run malicious code as well. And they can further gain access to your containers by exploiting security gaps and vulnerabilities on the container host. So now let's look at how cloud workload protection helps solve these problems. So CWP essentially helps you with the auto discovery feature to discover all your workloads that exist in your cloud environment. It gives you a visibility into the security posture, the kind of softwares that are installed, the level of patching, and this is all enabled via an integration with cloud native applications. With anti-malware capabilities, you can discover and remediate malware on computer instances, and it is powered by industry-leading SEP anti-malware technologies, which is continuously getting updated and to remain state of art. Now, with real-time file integrity monitoring, you can monitor critical file systems, configuration files, and you have an option to receive alerts on unauthorized changes so that you can take necessary actions as necessary. Now, CWP also provides application control and isolation capabilities that allow only authorized applications into your production environment. And it will block advanced threats to reduce the attack surface overall. And with container protection, you can detect attacks that are targeting your container infrastructure and block them before they can propagate or compromise containers. And lastly, you have cloud native integration with the CI/CD pipeline that will enable the DevOps teams to build security directly into their development and service deployment workflows. So essentially, it addresses all the challenges that you would have with the workloads in the cloud environment. And it is able to also give you a holistic view of your hybrid environment, where you could manage your on-prem assets along with your cloud assets through a single pane. Now, let's deep dive into the storage issues that you would face on the cloud. So in case of storage, you could have malwares and threats that can infect storage, and it can further propagate to applications, adjacent storages, and the end users who are accessing these stores. There could be missed configurations for the storage objects that can allow unintended access to sensitive information, and that could lead to a data breach, which is definitely going to cause a huge financial damage to an organization, but it will also impact the reputation of that organization. So it's extremely critical to ensure that these issues are addressed by having an appropriate solution. And you need to ensure that you have the right security controls in place when you start using these storage, cloud storages. Now, CWP, let's look at how CWP addresses some of these challenges. CWP has anti-malware capability that allows the user to discover and remediate anti-malware threats in these cloud storages before they can spread to the applications or users. Now, CWP also allows you to do schedule scans, and it can scan big files as well as archives, and also has the capability to quarantine any infected files. CWP storage also alerts you when storage buckets are misconfigured or exposed to the public internet, and thereby preventing any data leakage. And most importantly, it offers in-tenant scanning capability so that the customer's valuable data always remains inside the customer's protected environment during anti-malware scanning. And this ensures that the data is secure and there is no additional data transfer cost that is incurred by the customers. Now moving to the control plane issues. In most organizations, they will have limited visibility into their cloud resources, be it the services that are running in the cloud or the information about who's accessing them. And this can result in policy violations and cause damages. Now, missing configurations or misconfigurations can result in data breaches, and if the service is misconfigured in cloud, it propagates the same issue to the resources, which increases the risk multifold. Assessing cloud environment for compliance reporting can be a daunting task, and if the result in audit failure, and if it results in audit failures, there are hefty fines that you need to pay. And if you do not have a well-defined processes and automation around it, it is extremely challenging to manage this. If you are doing manual assessments and remediation, then it can slow down your response entirely. And there is a huge cost that is associated with this. So CWP has a cloud workload assurance solution which addresses these challenges as well. With CWA, customers can discover all their cloud resources automatically and view their security posture. They'll be able to see in real time what is the level of compliance for each of those services or resources. And CWA monitors security settings and the infrastructure for changes, which is continuous monitoring. and alerts on policy violations. It also offers compliance assessments with predefined policies to assess your security policies and settings against industry best practices and regulations. It also gives you details of what controls failed, along with the evidence for it and the steps to remediate it. And to take it a step further, it has auto remediation capability, which quickly remediates missed configurations and applies security policy to improve security posture and maintain overall compliance. So essentially covers most of the compliance requirements in a easy and automated way. So that essentially covers cloud workload assurance. And now with this slide, you'll be able to see that be it a hybrid environment, Cloud Workload Protection Suite has a comprehensive set of product solutions that will address most of your requirements when it comes to cloud workload protections or storage protections or compliance assessments in cloud or in a hybrid environment. So that essentially brings me to the end of this presentation, and we can be open for questions now.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sharad. I haven't seen any questions for now, but they may come at any other moment. So we'll let you know in case there are some questions. Well, first, I would like to thank very much to all the presenters, Klaus, Colin, Matthew, Sharak. Thank you very much. It has been really, really interesting and insightful. Just to wrap up, please make sure that you use the virtual booths. There's a lot of information from every vendor there. There's video chat, private text. There's always someone there. There's downloads, links. And also remember, please, to look for the virtual treasure hunt. So the more you explore our booths, the higher your chances are to win latest generation smartphone. As you know, the agenda is still very, very tight. We'll now continue back in the auditorium with Paul Cunningham, and he will be talking about distribution innovation for the partner of the future. So very interesting one. And yeah, again, thanks a lot. It has been a very, very insightful and very nice session. And see you in the auditorium. Thank you. Bye-bye.